Hello, everyone. I will not be doing an intro for this episode for the sake of simplicity. I am still adjusting to video, and this will be my first episode. This will be my first solo episode on video, and also each time I'm recording, I'm trying something different. So, for instance, the last episode I recorded on OBS, which is a video capturing software. Streamers use it. And although I got the job done, there were some things that I think I wasn't quite a fan of. So I went to Best Buy and I bought a really nice SD card, and we're trying to just record it straight onto a camera, and then I'll find a way to throw it onto my laptop and work from there. But all that to say, this is going to be my learning curve, as you guys know, and I don't want to sound like a broken record prefacing every episode this way, but I just want to let you know things may look or feel different each time until I kind of get my flow. Um, with that being said, also, it's 10:30 basically on a work night for me, and I'm already pushing my bedtime, so I know what I want to talk about, and I want to make it somewhat short and sweet, but I still want to make it good and enjoyable for you guys. So I don't know how long this episode is going to be. I just know my general idea of where I want to take it, and wanted to let you guys know that my personal life has been a bit of a whirlwind. We are in a very busy time in my life, and a lot of things are happening. And I know most of you are personal friends and family, so you either know what those things are or have a general idea. And I wish I could just delve into them here, but the digital footprint is very real, so I will not be doing that. But all that to say, hello, welcome to episode 19. We're solo this time, and I am alone in a room talking to a camera in a way that I never thought I really would. This is odd for me. And so you guys get to be a part of this novel experience. But with that being said, I guess we can just dive straight into it. Throughout earlier this week, a thought dawned on me, and it wasn't per se the first time, but it was the first time it kind of made a mental impact to where it snagged my consciousness long enough for me to really process it. It's been something that I've kind of thought about and bounced around in my head here and there for honestly a couple of years now. But after talking to a couple different people, it kind of stuck around more this time than prior. And so I kind of wanted to flesh it out here and see what you guys think, and see if anyone may understand where I'm coming from with this. But, and it's going to start off a little weird, but I'll make it make sense. A couple of experiences have happened to me lately. One, I have gotten the privilege of either developing friendships or having conversations with people who are notably younger than me. So I am 27. I'll turn 28 in July this year. And I have recently either been like talking to my brother, who is 19 going on 20. I have made a friend of one of my other friends, her younger sibling. She's 19 going on 20. And one of my very good friends, Eliza, I met her a couple years ago when she was 19. And we developed a very close friendship and had a ton of very deep conversations. And talking to, oh God, I've never really said this, but talking to all these young people, where they are observant of the world and ambitious and still like green and fresh, but not childishly naive. Talking to people like this has made me reflect upon myself a lot. And it's made me notice how much the years of adulthood tend to layer on in terms of how you view the world, how you view yourself, how open you are to new information or changing your mind on things. And I can't say it's in a good way. I realized, I think the more that I think about it, and I'm going to just kind of put my little theory out here and see what you guys think. But the more I think about it, the more it feels like when you're around the age of 20, give or take a year or two, you are fresh out of your childhood for the most part, fresh out of high school and or in college. And so still you're in this mental space of learning, building your worldview, being open to different ideas, fleshing them out, debating them, hearing them presented by a professional, whether that be a teacher or professor. And whenever I talk to people who are like 19, 20, they always have such great, really pinpointed questions about the world, about themselves, about what the purpose of everything is or what they should be doing with their lives. And there tends to be this like spark or this fire of curiosity and ambition in someone of this age that I really think as you go through the decade of your 20s, as I am turning the horn on, you tend to lose it for whatever reason. And I think I'm going to try and figure that out here in real time with you guys and see if I hit any key points that maybe is relatable to you guys. And then you guys can reach out to me as some of you do and share your thoughts. But I think that, I don't know, there's multiple things that I think play a role in it, but I guess I'll just kind of describe my perspective as someone in their now late 20s. But it feels like I have far less curiosity about the world, far less flexibility and malleability in my personal opinions, and far more certainty about who I am, what I want, where I'm going, how the world works, and everything in between. And granted, some of this feels like wisdom, whatever that may be. You can define it differently yourself, but some of it does feel like acquired knowledge. For the longest time, right around, for the longest time, meaning throughout grade school and then hitting a renaissance of it when I was like 19. But I've always had a curiosity for science, math, history, the arts, literature, whatever curriculum you want to talk about that comes in like a traditional schooling session. I've always had a general interest. I enjoyed school for the most part. I was a super social kid towards the end of it and was kind of showing up more for that and for sports. But when I turned 19 and I no longer was forced to go to school and I was going to school on my own fruition, did I start to really actually love learning and started doing it recreationally on my own. And I just had this like undying thirst for knowledge to understand the world. I mean, it perpetuated through my early 20s. I really think also I had Sean on and we worked together in a warehouse for a couple of years. And during that time, I was doing monotonous, repetitive work. And so I took advantage of that by listening to audiobooks. And that further fueled my learning phase, I guess, like recreational learning phase of my life. But I've always had these interests, right? And I feel like obviously it's almost like two simultaneous hypocritical truths present themselves, which is one, there's a finite amount of knowledge about the world and about our history that we have access to. You technically can learn it all. And to the opposite side of that same coin, which is the more you learn, the more you realize there is stuff out there you don't know, and the more finer you can get in the knowledge you're trying to acquire, the closer you can get to expertise. And I really wanted to be, as I was learning, much more of a jack of all trades. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the Pareto principle or like the 80-20 rule. And there's a bunch of different ways that it can be applied. So maybe the way that I'm applying it now might not be the way that it's been introduced to you. But for the most part, it has to do with like the main 80% of value being in like the first like 20% of something, and then the next like 80% of it is where you get the remaining 20% of value. So for instance, like when it comes to mastering a skill, the first 20% of the decade it would take, the first 2 years, let's say, you get about 80% proficiency. And then the next 8 years, you're going to be grinding out that final 20% to become a master at something. I really only cared about getting that first 80%. I wanted to spend, spend time on that first 20% of whatever I was learn the majority of the foundation of whatever subject it was or the basics, and then move on to the next thing. Because once I started getting into the weeds, once I started getting into specifics that were hitting territories of like college courses, and now I'm starting to learn like an expert in the field, I would do it if I was interested, but a lot of the times my curiosity would draw me to other fields. But that being said, I got to learn a lot of science, chemistry, biology, physics, astrophysics, astronomy, history, whether it be American or world. And obviously, like, I'm just some guy, right? I barely have an associate's degree in college. I don't really have a deep formal education like that. So everything that I've learned has been through the public school system and then on my own on YouTube or through books. So I'm nowhere near an expert on anything. But I like to think that I am well read on a decent amount of topics, to the point where I feel like I could know the right questions to ask an expert. Not even be able to keep up in a conversation per se, but just know the right areas to like dig at and go for. And so having that multi-year phase, I'd want to say it was like from when I was like 18 to when I was like 24. So I don't know, maybe about 6 years, maybe even a little further, maybe when I was like 25, 6 to 7 years of my early adulthood, I spent just soaking up as much information as I could recreationally. I loved it. I mean, it made the world make sense. It helped me with my own mental health. I learned a lot about psychology, and that helped me understand myself as a person and as like an animal, and all of our like animalistic human instincts and why we are the way we are. Helped me detach a lot of guilt on like the actions that I do, because I'm like, holy shit, this is just the way that the wetware between my ears is wired to be. I shouldn't claim agency over some of this stuff and give myself guilt. But as I learned, funny enough, I feel like part of my curiosity started to fade a little. I felt like I was learning a lot of the basics, and my worldview I was building was getting further and further accurate. And then on top of that, like the environments in which I was capable of, or the environments that I was in, which were perfect for recreational learning, started changing, right? I left my last job and I got a new one, and this one is much better, but is not a good space for me to be able to pop in a audiobook and just zone out. Like, I'm doing very active, engaging work rather than monotonous, mindless work. And so I know a part of it is that, but also, not only does it have to do with like you learn more as an adult, especially more if you get like more of an education, whether that be recreational or formal, but also your opinions on people and on life and the right way to do it, the right way to be an adult, those tend to harden over time. I used to be so much more open and malleable with my opinions on people. And I feel like I built my worldview. I got my opinions on how I feel like people work and how others work. And then I just started filtering in the information of my life through that lens. And I think my worry or my thought is that I'm doing a bit of confirmation bias where I'm retaining the information that is true and accurate so far as my worldview agrees, and perhaps ignoring or filtering out noise that could go against it and could be considered exceptions to my rules that perhaps should change my opinion. Um, and to be quite honest, I don't really enjoy it. I don't enjoy this feeling. And it is a really sobering experience. I don't know, for a lot of you listening, some of you may be close to the age of 19. And my way of describing the 19-year-old brain might feel applicable. But I also know a lot of people listening around my age, if not older. And so I don't know if you've talked to a younger adult lately about some of the more deeper, thought-provoking conversations, but I have, and it's been not only kind of like a privilege, it's been really cool to do so, but it's really kind of reminded me who I used to be. I think also recently Dylan and I whipped out our old albums on our phones and on our laptops, and we're looking at old pictures going back to high school and the golden years right after high school where you're still a kid doing bullshit but somehow have money from part-time jobs or whatnot. And I was, I think, far more optimistic on people, far less of a cynic, but also way more open-minded to the world, to the way it works, curious, kind of hungry for those things. And don't get me wrong, that position is uneasy to be in. You don't know how the world works. You're not quite sure how people are. You're constantly worried about the unknown, about that lack of life experience is not all pros. There are cons, and that constant worry of like, am I going to figure it out? Is my life going to turn out the way I want? Am I even doing anything right? Is this all a waste of my time? Those are very real, and I have those less now. They don't go away, and I don't think they ever fully do, but I have them less now. And I don't know. I think the combination of revisiting pictures and videos, and I even had screenshots of like text messages that I had, and that kind of just gave me like a huge like waft of the past. It gave me like not quite deja vu, but just like pulled me back to those days, and it reminded me kind of like what headspace I was in, what was a priority for me at the time, what I was worried about. And then the combination of that night and talking to some of these fucking teenagers or young adults, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, like I miss that. I miss being so curious. I miss being so open-minded. I feel like as the years of being an adult just wash over you constantly, and as it feels like time is speeding up and each year is quicker, it only feels like your worldview just further cements. Like before, you were wet cement and you were malleable and could be shaped. Wet clay, you could do whatever analogy you like, but I'm feeling that plasticity cure over time. I'm feeling it harden, and I kind of hit a little like worry. Like I wouldn't call it like a full crisis, but I kind of had some inner monologues where I was like, is this how things are supposed to go? Is this anything that I have control over, or can I change this? Like, do I have agency and control over the fact that I wonder less, that I am harder to change my own mind? It's harder for others to change my mind and my opinions on things. And don't get me wrong, some of my opinions I think I have hard earned. Like, I really believe that some of them all that learning I did and all of that recreational, curious insight really led me to some very strong opinions that I have that I think I got for good reason. I think I collected accurate and good information, built an accurate worldview that has continuously been validated by that. And some of these opinions I really think are like, okay, yeah, like, these are empirical or science-based or, what have you. And they're not just like fluffed up personal theories based off of my ego that I just project outward. But all that to say, I think there are opinions that I have absorbed over just existing as an adult over the years that I haven't fully vetted. I haven't fully validated. I haven't fully picked apart and fleshed out and found where I got that opinion. I also haven't, calibrated a lot of my opinions to the real world fully, like you have your bubble, you have your people, your family, your friends, your social environment that you're in. But there's a case to be made that isn't an accurate sample size of the rest of the world. I know that a lot of people had a oh shit bubble bursting moment. Pardon me as I get a drink. But had a bit of that moment when Trump won the election. I'm not making this a political episode. I still plan on doing one of those eventually, but there were people that I knew that were very liberal who were, to say the least, very shocked that Trump won the election. I can't say I was shocked. I quite frankly went into that election thinking that both sides were more convicted on the fact that they were going to win than I'd ever seen. So it kind of left me a little uncertain about who was going to win. And so a win on either side would have surprised me. But I'm getting a little away from the point here. There were people who genuinely had to look inward and realize that they were not seeing the America or the country for what it really was. And I think that's healthy to do. I think that when you watch an election and you see that, like, I don't know how many people, like 75 million people voted for Trump. If you're someone who's like very liberal and you have this idea that Trumpism is just this like niche MAGA cult of psychopaths and he was going to get, just totally wiped out in the election, it should be a pivotal moment for you to reflect and go, oh, well, if you have any general sense of what the average person is like, you should believe that 75 million people aren't psychopathic, cultist, Trump meat riders, for lack of a good term. A lot of them are average Americans who, quite frankly, don't even care about politics for 3.5 years. And then when an election comes around for those 6 months, they do their civic duty and vote, but then they go back to their normal lives and don't quite care that much. They don't own political merch. They don't fly a flag for either candidate. They don't put bumper stickers on their car. They're just a normal person who cares about putting food on the table. I was friends with people who were very out of touch with that fact or that reality. And I think and it wasn't just like people that I knew, but you could see like public figures also being just so taken aback. A lot of very popular like TV hosts or late night hosts or news personalities were, just like, oh my God, I didn't even think he had a chance, and he like won every swing state, and like every state shifted red. And just observing that phenomenon is like, holy shit, like so many people are out of touch. And I, on a much smaller scale that quite frankly doesn't have anything to do with politics, like just worry that I am falling to that same like outcome, that I'm falling victim to that same thing, just on like my idea of people and my cynicism. For instance, like I I spend a lot of time on social media. Like Twitter's my main app. Instagram is right there after it. And then I don't know, maybe Reddit for like my niche hobbies or niche interests. But the people on Twitter are terrible. Like if you don't have a Twitter, it is just an amalgamation of the worst human beings you have ever seen. And it when you spend a lot of time on there, you lose connection with how many people are on Twitter who don't interact with anyone. You could see a tweet that has a terrible opinion, right? There's a certain group of people that is, that has been labeled off of a part of them that they cannot control, whether it be skin color, sex, sexuality, whatever it may be. And that there's a tweet just absolutely hating, just pure fucking hatred towards this group of people. And it'll have 100,000 likes on it. And you're like, holy shit, dude. Like, that's so many people who are actively engaging with this content and being like, I support this, I'm behind this, I believe in this. And it is just like an objectively awful, horrible take. And then you like look at the numbers for that tweet and it's like, oh, this tweet had 40 million views on it. And then when you put that into perspective, you're like, well, okay, if 40 million people saw this and 39.9 million people didn't like it, that's a pretty solid ratio. Not ideal, obviously. We'd hope it'd be maybe a few factors smaller, but nonetheless, it feels a lot different. Where if you put it into the perspective of someone was speaking to a crowd of 40 people, actually, no, we'll do 400 people, and they said a horrible thing, and then one person was like, woo, and they like clapped for this and cheered it on. That's what it actually feels like. But the difference between the experiences is night and day. To go on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, and see someone tweet something terrible and then get 100,000 supporters, you're flabbergasted. You're like, how can this be? But then when you put it into the ratio perspective, the same exact person saying something terrible to a group of 400 people and one person supporting it, that feels like reality. That feels like how normal discourse should exist. But I think part of the problem with a lot of these social media sites is they don't have a proper upvote, downvote system. Reddit does that, but Reddit's Achilles heel is each community is a bubble. So if you go on a certain political subreddit, you can go on one specifically for left-wing people. And so everyone in there is going to be left-wing, and you're not going to get a good general consensus for the average population. And so if you say something and it gets 50,000 upvotes and 1,000 downvotes, you're looking at a net gain of 49,000 upvotes, and everyone's like, yeah, look, everyone agrees with this. But in reality, if you actually exposed it to a proper distribution of the average population, you would probably get a lot closer to like net zero. You'd probably get a lot closer to evening out. And I don't know, I think there's a combination to reel it back a little bit to like my main point of like losing that ambition, that freshness, that malleability to your opinion and your perspective on life as you age as an adult. It's terrifying because I'm only 27 and I'm already feeling it. If I was only beginning to feel this at like 35, I'd probably feel better, but it's weird still being considered young in a lot of people's eyes and already feeling my opinions like set into stone, and I don't like it. I'm gonna, in my personal life, I feel like I'm gonna start taking steps towards trying to reverse these effects. And part of this podcast is me kind of actively figuring out where it's rooting from. Part of it, I believe, is social media. I believe those echo chambers and the utter gross cacophony that causes a lot of chaos and attention, but not maybe a lot of support in the grand scheme of things, skews my perspective in a unhealthy and incorrect way. I think Instagram probably does that as well. Instagram is notable for its horrific humor on its reels. It didn't used to be like this. Instagram, as people know, is owned by Meta, which used to be Facebook. And if for anyone who is out of touch and doesn't know, Facebook just changed its name to Meta, and that's its like parent company now. Facebook is still a thing. Instagram's still a thing. Like the Quest VR is still a thing, but it's all owned by the parent company Meta, in the same way that like Alphabet is Google's parent company. But when prior to Elon Musk purchasing Twitter and turning it into X, a lot of these social media sites had a ton of censorship, and it was one way. It was very clearly left-wing supported censorship, shutting down a ton of right-wing conversations, some of them justified, some of them not. I do believe in free speech, but I also believe in private companies to be able to run their companies however they want. If that means into the ground, so be it. But I understand the argument people make for these companies to have a lot of power over public discourse. I'm watching the effects on myself currently. But all that to say, Elon Musk kind of opened the floodgates for a new wave of social media where basically he just allowed right-wing people to get online and be as cancerous as left-wing people had been for the last decade. And boy, have they. It has been a wild ride to witness. And I can't necessarily say that these social media platforms have gotten better, but at least they've gotten more egalitarian in how awful people can be on them, which I think is better. Like, allow people to publicly embarrass themselves equally. Don't just, because it makes, in my opinion, for a while, it made the right wingers look less crazy because they weren't allowed to be crazy in the light. But all that to say, when Elon Musk kind of changed the discourse online and kind of exposed some of these companies for a lot of the censorship, Mark Zuckerberg kind of followed suit with how his policies went with Facebook and Instagram. And lately, Instagram has been a lot more Wild West with its humor. You can get some fairly fucked up reels in your algorithm. And don't get me wrong, I love my dark humor. I would not want someone going through the reels that I'd be sending to Joel and Dylan and all of my guys' friends, because a lot of people just don't share that humor. But all that to say, if you're someone who maybe does not find that humor as lighthearted or enjoyable, you probably could run across a reel on Instagram and have the same kind of like pseudo-reality, weird, out-of-touch experience that I've had on X/Twitter, which is, oh my God, this content is terrible. How does this have hundreds of thousands of likes or 1 million likes or whatnot? I'm not on TikTok as much, to be frank, so I don't know how their censorship has or has not gone. But as far as I'm concerned, I can't imagine that they're allowing half the shit that Instagram allows, which is just so wild to say in retrospect. But to try to not run off on tangents too hard because I'm on late night brain mode. I think a huge chunk of the reason my brain is going the direction it is because of social media, because of the time that I spend on these apps and the way that it skews my perspective. I also think that it is a privilege to be able to ponder, to be able to wonder about the world, to pursue education recreationally. It is a huge privilege to be able to do so. And the reason I say that isn't because of like any social justice stance of like systemic oppression or whatnot, but just in terms of reality of modernity itself. For the far majority of human beings' existence, we were hunter-gatherers, where all of our existence was waking up when the sun came up, finding food, not dying, and then going to sleep and doing it again, and then on occasion trying to mate with someone. That was it. Our brains are hardwired for that to be our reality. And then modernity came around. And as agriculture became a thing and societies were formed and civilizations were capable of producing more food than it actually needed on a day-to-day basis, then when you have more food, you don't need as many hunters because you're raising livestock or you're growing crops. And so some of these people became a really crude version of white collar jobs where they were oligarchs or they were royalty or leaders, politicians, and also teachers, philosophers, pursuers of knowledge. Um, if we didn't take on agriculture and start building civilizations with a value surplus rather than constantly only acquiring what we needed from the land, we wouldn't have people like Isaac Newton. We wouldn't have Galileo. We wouldn't have Einstein. We wouldn't have any of these great thinkers because they wouldn't be allowed to spend their existence working on this incredible, like, generational discoveries that they made, because their job would be keep the tribe alive, go out and hunt. You do not have time to work out different mathematical problems or ponder as to why the planets move in the way they do. The best you could get is on a long hike during the day. You could think in your head a little or maybe have some curiosity about why the stars are the way they are at night. But to be able to sit down and spend your entire life, like decades, on math, that's a huge privilege. That is a sign of a society that has enough resources that they can support people not contributing directly to those resources. Fast forward to today, and the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because when you're a kid, when you're going through high school and when you're going through college, you are living in a very, I hate the word privilege. I feel like it has been so bastardized and is so much like gross taboo, like almost like resentment and hate behind the word. A lot of people have their opinions on it, but for me, it's just, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth with how people weaponize it against others to make them feel like shit. But in this case, I'm going to use it in its most inherent and native sense. It is a very privileged position to be able to spend your every waking moment not caring for yourself, not having to earn your keep. And so your mind is put in a position to where it is just constantly engaging with new information, with curious, challenging ideas. And it is just like, I picture like a person who is like really physically fit, but that's like an analogy for how your brain is for concepts, ideas, opinions, information. And you're in this state that you don't even realize is this super lucky position to be in, because quite frankly, ever since you were born, you were A, being taken care of, and B, in school. So as far as you're concerned, this is reality for you. And then, as all adults say, you actually get hit with real reality, which is you have to leave the nest, you have to take on a full-time job, you have to start paying for your own bills. And the thing that I have noticed as a 27-year-old adult is I have far less time to learn, to engage in classroom-like environments, or to engage with professor-esque characters in my life, because I am worried about keeping the lights on. I'm worried about making sure that I make enough money to stay fed. And I lived my life going to school thinking that this was normal and what most of my life was going to feel like, because it's all I knew. And so I was just so constantly primed for cognitive malleability. And now I'm, deep into working full time, have several years under my belt of what I believe I'm forming as a career. And I'm like, okay, if I wanted to go home and read a book or like put on a hour-long video about molecular biology for the sake of pure raw curiosity on how the world works, A, I just worked a 10-hour shift. I'm tired. B, I don't get 8 hours of sleep anymore because work makes me get up early and I don't have a consistent sleep schedule. So I don't have the energy for it or the cognitive energy for it. And like, finally, like I should be spending that time doing other things. Like, I spend so much time at work. I get home, I have laundry. I need to take care of like my room or my chores. If I have like one project, which is this, like this will take up any spare moment of my time. And then God forbid you want to have some sort of a social life, you're going to need to go out and make plans with people. Like, I have a calendar app now, dude. Like, I didn't have a calendar app when I was fucking 19. I'd hit up my friends at any hour of the goddamn day or night. They would hit me up back and we'd go do something. Now I have to pencil my friends in on a Wednesday afternoon to get dinner. Like, it's a lot different. And so I've noticed that this adult life that we've carved out for ourselves kind of starves us of our natural curiosity and wonder for the world. And only if you're in a very privileged position, whether that be as a child or as a college student, or as a person who, for whatever reason, doesn't need to work and doesn't have other responsibilities like kids to take care of, only then are you really in a true position to spend a good amount of time pursuing wonder and curiosity in the world in an academic sense, or in a social sense, or however you want to frame it. And even now, to this day, let's say I did want to start going to school again. I can't go to school and just pursue interests purely to pursue them because I'm interested in them. No, if I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a degree in engineering or a degree in business management or a degree in finance. For why? So that I can further fuel my career, which is already the thing kind of preventing me from being able to pursue this knowledge or pursue these interests. And I say all of that with a huge asterisk because I don't believe that my life should be that way and that I am being deprived by dysfunctional society. I know a lot of people are so resentful to the rat race. They hate it so much. They think that the world should be, whether it be through anarchy, communism, socialism, you name your framework that you believe, if the world burned down and yours rose like a phoenix, finally would be in a utopia. However you want to frame it, a lot of people resent the current world because they believe that it should be closer to a utopia and it isn't. My perspective on this is we are so much closer to a utopia than human beings ever should have been, and the amount of advancement we have done alone is a miracle that we should be grateful for. And so I feel very grateful that I even get to be the type of person who doesn't have to go grow his own crops or hunt his own animals or create my own clothes or live in a hunter-gatherer society. I have fucking Amazon Prime, dude. I can whip out my phone, say that I want another camera lens tomorrow, and someone's going to bring it to me, and all I have to do is pay $15 a month or however much Amazon Prime is right now. It is, we're already living in the future. So I'm a very grateful person for the world we live in, and I feel very grateful that all I have to worry about is a boring old 9 to 5, and I'm not fighting a saber-toothed cat on a cliff just so I can eat. I know a lot of people don't share that perspective, but I think it's a healthy one to consider taking on if we're going to be on the topic of being open to your opinions being changed. But I think regardless to whether or not we should or shouldn't be living in a world where we are constantly working, I think that's just the default state right now until the AI revolution happens and every job is automated and we're all on universal basic income and it's frolicking through the flowers. We will have to work for our keep. We've just done a really good job of leveraging technology to where we can do a lot less harsh jobs for a lot more value than before and never have to worry about starving. Like, modernity has allowed us to do that. I know that also doesn't apply to every country. We're a privileged country alone just for the success that we have seen. But regardless to all of that, a byproduct of it is you have to turn off the wonderful glint in your eye, the spark in your heart, the philosopher to be. You have to turn that off, and you have to lock in. You got to grind a little, and you got to know that your job comes first, because money comes first, because your needs come first. And then all these other things get pushed to the back burner. And the only thing that really can help you is really prioritizing what you want, getting really good at time management, or breaking free from the 9 to 5 in some way, somehow. And so a part of my current struggle, you guys, is finding out how to maybe cheat the system a little, or maybe not even cheat the system, but just get good at finding that 19-year-old curiosity spark again. Talking to people of this age and just allowing them to speak their mind to you, or ask their deepest questions, or reveal their worries. It's been awesome. It's been like a time machine and brought me back to when I was asking these same exact questions, giving me a sense of relief and gratefulness that I don't grapple with some of these worries and problems anymore, but also giving me a little bit of FOMO and being like, dude, like, you love learning so much. Like, I used to love learning that much. Like, I still do, but I don't actually do anything about it anymore, outside of the occasional curious Google search or ChatGPT question. But it makes me wonder. It makes me kind of feel like this is a little mini project I want to take on, and I really have no idea how I'm going to do it, if I'm even going to do it soon. Like, I for sure shit ain't doing it tomorrow. I am going to be exhausted by the time I get to go to bed, and it's going to make my day tomorrow long. And that's just a part of it, you know? Like, I'm prioritizing work, which I spent 10 hours at today, and my hobby, which I am spending another few hours on. And the only other things I've done are adulting stuff, like go to the store, purchase something I need, go get food, chat with my roommates, like all things that I either needed to do or just ended up eating away my time. And if I got all of the stuff I wanted to get done today, and I wanted to fit any time for just learning or pursuing knowledge in that sense, it would eat away at my sleep, which is unhealthy and a non-negotiable to that extent, you know? And so I don't know, I want this to kind of be a bit of a wake-up call for myself, maybe a bit of a checkpoint, and for anyone listening who might be able to find this sort of topic relatable, consider whether or not the like ebb and flow and constant cycle of life has gotten you to a place of rigidness where you're maybe not as open to new ideas, or maybe really easily dismissive of other people who you already think you've put them in the right box. And then they come to you with a story or a question or an opinion, and you can brush it off because I've already put you in your box. I know what kind of person you are. I've met a million of you, and therefore I don't need to listen to the 1,000,001 that is now crossing my life. But I really think that that's, wrong, especially in a day and age where identity politics, or just identity in general, is such a harsh and crass topic nowadays. Like, if you're a black person, you're expected to have certain opinions, and if you don't, you get called not black, whatever that means, or you get called not of the culture, or not like us, or whatever you want to frame it. Same thing with people in Hispanic spaces, or if you're in a queer space, anything of the sort. If you hold certain opinions that don't fit the box, not only do you surprise everyone else who has already labeled you, but you also kind of get rejected a little bit by your own community who is self-labeled. Um, and I really do not see a lot of deep long-term value in that sort of lifestyle or behavior. I really think that if you're someone who identifies as Republican, but for whatever reason it wants to be pro-choice, like, you should still stand on that shit. Like, you should still be like, I am Republican and I'm pro-choice. And you're very capable of knowing how weird that sounds on the surface, but you should allow yourself the grace of being someone who actually cares enough about learning about the world and what is right and what isn't, and forming your opinions on those things and questioning long held beliefs for the healthy reasons to where you're comfortable with some of those things. Like, for instance, I'll use myself as an example, because like, I lean left on a lot of policies. I take my political compass test and I end up on the left, but not very deep, especially nowadays with how the political climate is. But all that to say, like, I still, very much so support the Second Amendment. I support the right to own firearms, and I think that the overwhelming majority of firearm owners are not a threat, and I think it is really important to be able to defend yourself against a possible tyrannical government. I know a lot of people like scoff at that because they're like, what are you going to do against a B-2 bomber? But I think it's a lot more grayscale than that. And all that to say, I know that a lot of people who may politically align with me on some certain social topics, like drug legalization or healthcare, may also like feel cheated, stabbed in the back, or like I'm some traitor because I may not agree with him on gun reform. Should I say certain policies of gun reform? And I don't like the feeling of being someone who conforms to social pressure, where if I am amongst the same opinion with people on one topic and then the topic changes, that I should feel that pressure to conform for the sake of social cohesion. I really, really think it's important to be able to look at each topic or problem with a clean slate, and then going based off of your like ground, like foundational philosophy or beliefs, and then building your opinion off of that. But a lot of people treat their identity and their opinions nowadays like it's a sports team, and they care so much about being seen waving the flag of their team than they actually care about being right. And I think that social media and the day-to-day rat race adult grind just bog down the open-minded, curious person in everyone, so much so that the incentives that win them over aren't the right ones. You're no longer looking into stuff because you're skeptical of whether or not it's right and know that you're very easily wrong about something. No. The influencer that I follow, or the streamer that I like, or the sports athlete that I enjoy, or the actor whose movies I'm a fan of, they hold this opinion. And I look up to them, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, and therefore I am swayed. Or all of my friends are out getting food and someone brings up the conversation around Israel and Palestine, and everyone at the table has a really staunch and strong opinion on that topic. And not only is their opinion strong, but they believe that anyone who disagrees with them is immoral and a bad person. And where does that leave you, undecided viewer? What do you do about that? Do you dare go against your friends in that moment? For what? There's no real win there. You nod your head, conform, and move along. And that's if you aren't very socially susceptible to that stuff. If like, for myself, I'm fairly confident in myself for the most part. I learn more and more every day that I have more insecurities that I didn't even know about, or areas to work on. But for the most part, I think I have a healthy self-esteem. If I'm in a situation where a hot topic is up and everyone is like very socially pat on their opinion, they're standing on all 10 toes down. They're about that shit. And not only are they about that shit, but they're against others who hold a different opinion. I smile, I nod, I give some sort of non-answer, and I let the social conversation move forward because it's not my position nor place to change their mind, like especially if it's like at work or something, right? But that's just me as like a person who has a built up thick skin for social pressure. And I'm not perfect, but think about someone, if it's not yourself, then a friend or a family member who is very easily swayed by social pressure, or perhaps insecure and seeking validation from a group of people because you want to be accepted. Now let's take it back to that hypothetical at the cafe. Your friends are talking about Israel and Palestine. They have a very, very strong opinion on it. And they also believe that someone who holds the other opinion is immoral, blind, unrelatable, inhumane. And you are desperate for these people to like you. What are you going to do? Naturally, your incentive, your subconscious or conscious levers being pulled are going to tell you to immediately not only agree with them, but double down on that shit. Find a way to impress them next time this conversation gets brought up. See the things that they give social thumbs up to, social brownie points. Like if you know some niche statistic around the conversation, it doesn't even need to be right. It doesn't even need to be accurate. You don't even need to cite a source, but you can just say, oh, this group killed this many of this group, or this group has this many hostages with this group. And if you watch these people who you're desperately seeking this validation from light up and be like, oh my God, thank you so much for bringing that to the conversation. Or finally someone who gets it. I knew I liked you. Oh my God, that shit hits like crack, right? I mean, you're making friends. You're getting these people to accept you, even though you may not be being honest, or even though you may not have done honest work to get there. You don't have time. You work your 9 to 5. You need to make sure that you're in bed by time. You got to make food for the week. So who am I to sit down and listen to a 2-hour podcast of some person speak on the intricacies of Israel and Palestine? You don't have time for that. You barely have time for the news. I'd much rather doom scroll on my phone and see funny memes and then interact with my friends later than ever educate myself. And this is the thing. I don't blame you. Half of this is being directed at myself, where I don't have the time to do that. Or should I say, I don't make the time to do that. But my whole thing is, regardless to whether or not you acknowledge it, that system is set up this way. You need to work to pay your bills. You need to make money to keep the lights on and keep food in your stomach and clothes on your back. That is going to be the majority of your hours in the day, unless you free yourself financially from the rat race, which is a different conversation. Most people will never do that. And so you need to buckle in, because this is life for a long time. I think everyone would benefit from not sharing opinions they're not educated on, or vetting their sources, vetting the statistics that they constantly parrot because I heard Don Lemon or Tucker Carlson say it on a show. You didn't check if they were fucking right, because those guys are wrong all the time. But you want those social brownie points. You want to be able to win your friends over, even if you're somewhat healthy in your confidence. You still really enjoy that little scratch it gives to that itch, where you get to win them over on something important and moral, right? And I think this is where most of virtue signaling comes from. It's like the current short-term incentive is win people over, be likable, get those social clout tokens, those brownie points, and not nearly as much about being actually fucking accurate. Because, quite frankly, with certain conversations like abortion, currently immigration, tariffs, Israel, Palestine, you name it. If you wanted to talk about these things, if you actually spoke to the majority of people with a cutthroat educated opinion, you would probably piss them off, because most of the time it's very nuanced, it's very down the road, it's very understanding of where both sides are coming from, and most people don't even know the amount of stuff that they don't know. And so the idea that you would be coming from a place that is humanizing the oppressor or the enemy or the devil or whoever you view the opposition as, I mean, it's blasphemy. It is going directly against the church of politics that they go and worship every fucking day on their phone. And I don't have a solution to this, quite frankly. I'm not coming to you presenting or shedding light on this issue and then going, and here's the solution. The best I can say is, like, just really do a good job of paying attention to where you get your information from. And if you get information that you can't vouch for, you can't vet, you can't figure out, then don't retain it. Don't repeat it. Don't use it. Just kind of take note, nod a little bit, go, that might be true. Maybe if another really valid source can come around and say the same thing, maybe then it is true. But for now, it's still undecided. And just kind of allow those I don't knows to really pile up, and you'll come off as a lot less of an asshole. And also just try to figure out what that incentive is, what that motivation is. Like, check yourself a little bit. Are you in that cafe with your friends, and like that opinion you're about to give, like, are you going to get a really, really good feeling saying it around them because you know that you're going to scratch some of their itches? And if so, be a little hesitant, be a little worrisome. Check yourself. Go, am I going to say this for the right reasons? Or am I, falling victim to a very easy trap of wanting to win people over rather than be accurate? And most people will ask, like, what's the point? Like, is this relevant? Why does this even matter? And I think that's fair. But I think it matters because most people are constantly engaging in the worldwide conversation about these topics. And I think the world would be a lot better place if they were better educated, more skeptical, or less loud. And also, at the end of the day, for the majority of the people listening, you're an American. You vote. Like, your opinion really actually holds weight every so often, especially when you put it in ink. And, we can have our discussions about presidential elections and how much they do or do not matter, or how much, like, a person's vote in California actually does anything when you aren't living in a swing state. But all the other topics, all the other politicians, all the other candidates running for election, re-election, whatnot, all the props that change the way that taxes go, or the way that money gets divvied out to communities in need, or the way that we treat crime, like, all of these things matter a lot. They have a huge ripple effect for the future. And I think everyone would do a little good of maybe sitting down and acknowledging that, as much as it doesn't feel like it, there are really pivotal moments, either when you're having a conversation with people, or say something that ends up going viral on accident, or voting, or even just, as Dylan likes to say, like, voting with your wallet, even if you're, like, putting money out towards a cause or a product or a service or whatnot. That has that butterfly effect. And I know a lot of people believe in the idea of a butterfly effect, whereas if you were to go back in time, change one little thing, put, like, one car in a different parking spot, and you come forward 100 years, it's like a completely different society with different people in charge and a good or bad ruler or whatnot. This idea that one small change has a huge ripple effect as time goes on, that still applies to right now, like the current present day, and the future moving forward. And so I don't know, like maybe I'm projecting a little bit of my own moral principles or my own beliefs and philosophy, but I think that stuff matters. I think if people were able to reactivate a little bit of humble curiosity, a little bit of wonder, some maybe wet the clay of their mind more, they would be humbly okay with changing some opinions, with maybe recognizing that half the reason that you hold some of the opinions you do is because you subconsciously were socially pressured into agreeing to those opinions, but you didn't have the time, understandably so, to research them. And a very brief and polite "I don't know" would have done a lot better. Maybe it's time to, some person listening, it's time to rethink who you're friends with and whether or not they would allow you to disagree with them. I'm not even saying on any particular like really edgy hot topic, but just any current political conversation. If you were to have them around your friends or family, and if you were to go, "Hey, I think I'm on the other in the other camp," or maybe let's entertain the idea. Let's not just treat them as cavemen and us as these deep, insightful, futuristic, like Renaissance men. Let's hear them out genuinely. Give them a real college try. If you were to do that or say that around your friends, and if they were to look at you in disgust, like those aren't good people. Like I'll cut to the chase. I'm tired enough to kind of get straight to the point. Those aren't people in it for the right reasons. They're not pursuing real truth. They're pursuing to be viewed and like ordained in a virtuous light so that they can win over God knows who, or align with whatever celebrity, or cope with some unaligned or misaligned worldview. And maybe those people are really great for like getting drinks on a weekend, or maybe the occasional Airbnb trip, but like not as good, real close, tight-knit community friends. I don't know. But all that to say, I think it can be a bit dangerous. Like those of you listening, whether it have been a few years ago or a few decades ago, you were a kid, you were a teenager with staunch, strong opinions, and you looked at the older generation as set in their ways, ignorant, and unchangeable, and just waiting for them to age out of life so that the world can move on past their archaic dinosaur opinions. And I am coming to you as a 27-year-old guy who maybe pays attention to himself too much and saying, like, I get why they got there. I get how they got there. I can actively feel the forced priority of having to be an adult first and a thinker second put you in that position over the long term. A lot of you watching this or listening, or a lot of your acquaintances, family, and friends who are very understanding, empathetic, open-minded, willing to change their mind right now, will not be that way when they're 50. And that's unfortunate, because quite frankly, the more I flesh out this idea and the more I think about it, the more that shouldn't be the case. It's much more a lack of philosophical hygiene, I think, than it is just a excusable outcome. So many, I mean, just, I'll be very straightforward about it. So many people within my generation, I'm on the cusp of Gen Z. I'm writing between Gen Z and millennial, depending on who you ask, but millennials have been a little too cringe for me, so I'm over in the Gen Z camp until they make me feel too cringe, and then maybe I hop back. But growing up in my generation, we view a lot of Generation X and baby boomers as deeply ignorant, particularly around their views on gay people, on marriage, on abortion or whatever the case is. And we view them a lot of the times as ignorant, set in their ways, unchangeable, old people who are just not empathetic, don't care, lost in their ways, better off dead, for what a lot of people say. And firstly, that's not the case with a lot of people. I have a ton of people in my family that are just gems of human beings, and they are amongst those generations. That being said, I know that a lot of my family is an exception to the rule. I've met a lot of average people. They're unimpressive, hence average. But we view them this way because for the majority of our lives, we've been those professional thinkers. All we had to do was get fed by our parents and go to school. And so the idea of these new and challenging ideas for us is, we're very receptive to those. But to present them to someone who has been bogged down by life and the necessities that it brings, particularly raising your ass, whoever's listening, they don't have time to be a deeply nuanced, educated thinker. It was that or eat. They're going to choose eat. And so, but all that to say that generation was the generation of hippies, dude. Like they were the young people who was pissing off the man and anti-war and going about protesting certain political movements or big corporations. And then life beat them down. Time went on. They didn't have access to the internet. They didn't have all these resources at the tips of their fingers to educate themselves in a moment with correct or incorrect information. They just focused on life. They focused on their family. They focused on what was important to them. And when an opinion came across their dashboard, the best they could do was just like a gut intuition. You do that enough times and you're forming opinions that are way misaligned with reality, way misaligned with life. And it's understandable. And I bring all this up to say, hey, like, we are not an exception to that. We can, and a lot of us will, turn into these deeply ignorant, horrific, immoral old people who swear on everything that they have it right, and that these young people are just foolish and naive and uneducated and don't know how the real world works. My personal bet is our generation's obsession with identity politics, or with identity in general, plastering certain expected behavior on certain types of people based off of things that they were born with. Like I said before, what it means to be white or act black or be Hispanic or hold certain opinions, all of those things. I think that's going to be our Achilles heel. I think that's going to be our big crutch when we're older, is like so many people who are our age right now are going to be old people who can't help but put everyone in a fucking box, put a label on everyone, and expect certain behavior out of them, whether it be you should be more moral than you actually are being, or I immediately am going to think you're a distasteful person because you're a part of this group. I think that's going to be our boomer snag, and I think whatever generation is going to be young and beautiful and at the helm of life is going to look at us with disgust, and they're going to be like, you guys should be so much better. Like, weren't you the people that were protesting and lived through COVID and grew up with the internet. Like, shouldn't you know better? But as I feel life force itself to as I feel life force me to constantly make decisions at a whim, form opinions off of gut intuition and emotion, and not give me the time of day to really deep dive into all the things that are important in our current conversations right now. I can feel it. I can feel that process happening. I can feel the hardening of my mind. And I know I'm perhaps speaking in circles here a little bit, but it's understandable. I get it. I see why. And like for instance, like nobody listening to this knows anything about tariffs. You don't. And if you think you do, you know less than most experts, and therefore still probably shouldn't be advising anyone on it. Yet I guarantee you or your coworkers, not even you, the people who listen to this, you guys are fucking awesome. So when I speak outward, it's a lot of times it's at the average person who probably doesn't listen to this, but a lot of my viewers who are here and support me and talk to me, you guys are amazing and open-minded and really engage with me in a lot of meaningful conversation outside of the podcast. So I hope a lot of this doesn't come off as like personal attacks. But we'll use your guys' coworkers as an example because those are perfect. I know those fuckers are nuts. But your coworkers will look you dead in the face and be like, I know that these tariffs are awful, or I know that these tariffs are exactly what our country needs. And if you were to dare be like, how do you know that? And then they go, oh, well, doesn't it make common sense? And be like, no. And push one step further and be like, how do you actually know that? Like, what's your data? What's your source? What's your proof? You genuinely would offend these people because they wouldn't have it. Or they would say, oh, I saw it, but like I'll have to find it and send it to you. And then the thing they send to you is some hodgepodge YouTuber who also doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. This is how people form opinions nowadays, and they aren't even aware that they're doing it, and they don't even give a fuck that they're doing it. And when you do it for 40 fucking years, you turn into a boomer. And that's my whole fucking spiel. That's my whole point of this episode. That's going to be the fucking title of this thing, is I'm turning into a boomer, or I can feel myself doing it. Something along those lines. And I don't know, dude, like talk to more young people, like engage with people who are still just recently leaving the phase of their life where they've been doing nothing but learning and questioning themselves and trying to figure out their identity and their place in the world and the purpose of it all. And simultaneously, they're still a human being. They're still super empathetic. They're still super kind and loving. And it is this like beautiful concoction that like seemingly only lasts for a little bit before the reality of life like snuffs it out. And I hate to say that. I hate to sound so pessimistic. But like the only thing that really actively is going to prevent that is a lot of work for no real payoff other than possible fulfillment if that aligns with your values. And a lot of people it doesn't. So I don't know. I encourage you to be the exception to the rule. I encourage you to be someone who doesn't attach your identity to your opinions and allows yourself to be incorrect on things gracefully. I think if 10% of the world did this, I think we'd be so much closer to a utopia. But yeah, it's something that's been on my mind lately. I appreciate you guys allowing me to yap to you for a little over an hour on all of this. And I look forward to the rare and occasional message that I'll get on these monologues where someone, for whatever reason, I've struck a nerve, like in a good way. I've really hit home. But yeah, let me know if I'm crazy. Let me know if you also feel this, or particularly, please let me know if you don't relate to this at all and feel like I'm doing something wrong, because I would love to find out what that is and actively take account for that, adjust, pivot, But yeah, I think that'll wrap up today's episode. I still have to edit this and throw it all together. And I did my best to keep it fluid, straightforward, and to the point. I hope each episode that I put out and each video that I do will be A, on time. Sorry for the delay, guys. And B, better than the last. So, that being said, I've been Tub. This is Unserious University. This was episode 19. Thank you very much for being a part of it, and I will catch you next week. See ya.